What are some examples in the real world of the butterfly effect? Small actions triggering something massive? A ship of Cuban immigrants sinking leads to America invading Iraq. Such examples are common in history, but this is so vivid and unpredictable that I have to mention it. November 21, 1999, a boat carrying a dozen Cuban immigrants trying to get to Miami sank. Two of the passengers were a young boy named Elian Gonzalez and his mother, Elizabeth. Elian survived the sinking, but his mother did not. If he had drowned, or if she had survived, most of us would never have heard of this story. But he survived and was rescued by fishermen and brought to Miami. At this point, the story becomes an international incident. Elian was taken in by relatives in Miami, but his father still lived in Cuba, and wanted him back. What would usually be a simple custody issue, which the father would almost certainly win, was complicated by 50 years of Cuban-American relations. The large Cuban-American population in Miami has extremely negative feelings toward the Castro government in Cuba. To them, including Elian's relatives, sending the child back to Cuba was unthinkable. But the law pretty clearly gives parental rights to the father. The U.S. government ordered that Elian be returned to his father. Elian's American relatives refused. The situation, while technically peaceful, was incredibly volatile, and could turn violent at a moment's notice. The Border Patrol sent in an armed team to storm the house and take Elian back by force. No one was hurt, but armed government agents storming a home to seize a child played very badly in the media. This incident gave then-President Clinton a serious political black eye, particularly among Cuban Americans, which group is largely concentrated in Florida. It just so happened that it was an election year, and Clinton's vice president, Al Gore, was running to replace him. Clinton's political troubles ended up being passed on to his would-be successor. The 2000 election was one of the closest in U.S. history. The U.S. electoral system is set up so that whoever wins a state gets all the votes for that state. Florida is a big state, and its votes ended up deciding the election. Al Gore ended up losing the state by an incredibly thin margin, in an election that remains highly controversial, which means that George W. Bush became the 43rd President of the United States. It's highly likely that, had the Elian Gonzalez incident never happened, Al Gore would have been president. The consequences of a presidential election are numerous, but there are some very clear ones in this case. Less than a year into Bush's first term, the World Trade Center was destroyed by terrorists. Both Republicans and Democrats agree that Gore would have responded different to the attacks. Naturally, Republicans insist he would have done much worse, Democrats insist he would have done much better. Most obviously, while Gore might have still attacked Afghanistan, it's a near certainty he wouldn't have invaded Iraq. So, had Elian's boat not sank, or had his mother survived, Saddam Hussein would still be in power, 4,500 Americans and 100,000 Iraqis would still be alive, several hundred billions of dollars would not have been spent, and ISIS would likely not exist. At the same time, President Obama was elected primarily in response to the unpopularity of the Bush administration, so there's no way of knowing who would be in the Oval Office now. A single human death is more than a flap of a butterfly's wings, but the consequences of it are enormous.